President Donald Trump has joked during a meeting with Argentina's President Javier Milei that after Ukraine's President Zelensky requested U.S. Tomahawk missiles, Milei might want to use them against the opposition in Argentina. The remark came as both leaders discussed military aid and economic stabilizations with Argentina facing a significant crisis. At the same time, European Union Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas met with Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiga in Kyiv, expressing Brussels' strong support for delivering U.S.'s long-range Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine, seeing it as a vital step in strengthening Kyiv's position against Moscow. While President Trump has warned that before agreeing to provide the missiles, he wants to ensure they will be used solely for military purposes and not to escalate the conflict. President Zelensky has reassured him that Ukraine would target only military goals. Tomahawk missiles are a highly effective long-range weapons with a range of 2,500 kilometers, typically launched from naval platforms and valued at about $1.3 million each. Now, for this discussion, we go back to Glenn Grant. He's a former advisor to Defense Minister of Ukraine, joins us live from Riga. Thank you, Glenn, for staying with us.
Yeah, thank you.
Glenn, what do you think will be discussed in the upcoming Zelensky and Trump meeting on Friday?
Well, the Tomahawk missile bid is very similar to many of other bids made by Zelensky. You know, we wanted tanks, we wanted rocket launchers, we wanted F-16, and it's going to follow the same sort of line as those, which is, you know, they're expensive, they are rare. For example, Tomahawk missiles, they're not, the only ones at the moment really are those with the US and a couple of allies who've got small amounts. And they're not actually being made in great numbers. However they are delivered, someone is going to actually have to deliver some of theirs that they want for operations. And I don't think America with Hesketh at the moment is going to want to do that very quickly. There's going to be discussions about how long, what are you going to do with them, and how are we actually going to do this? Because you can't just give Tomahawk missiles in a box and then fire them. Ukraine, as you know, has no submarines for firing them. It's no large ships for firing them. It hasn't got any aircraft that can lift them and fly them and fire them. So it's got to be off ground units. And America has only just started redoing ground units for Tomahawk. So they're not going to want to give away, the Marines have got them now. They're not going to want to give those away in a hurry. So there's going to be an inevitable delay. This is not, again, think how long it took us for F-16, 3 years, and a lot of them are still not delivered yet because of pilots. Tomahawk missile is going to require training because you've got to have a command system that pre-programs the missile to work. And that means teaching people. And the course for that is probably at least a year long. So I don't think there's going to be anything happening in a hurry. But Zelensky will be trying to make it happen because he wants PR, because he senses an election coming in Ukraine. And so trying to get a yes for Tomahawk will be a big PR action for him, and probably a big PR action for Trump as well.
Right. Thank you for sharing that. I had no idea that it would take that long for Ukraine to utilize all this. So how do you assess the current effectiveness of Ukraine's air defense systems or defense systems, and what more can be done to strengthen them?
Well, you've got two things there. I mean, you said defense and then the attack systems. I mean, the air defense system for Ukraine, the problem is simply numbers of missiles, and they haven't got enough. And therefore, when Russia actually launches a lot of missiles, as they have been doing, it simply overwhelms the system. Ukraine cannot cover all the gaps with the amount of launchers and missiles that it has at the moment. And they are looking at different ways of doing this, and they're looking at the moment of testing different anti-Shahid systems, rocket-type systems, at the moment, and there are a lot of companies actually bringing in new ideas. So I suspect that something will happen on that in the next 3 to 6 months. But this again, it requires an organization. If you have extra missiles, new types of missiles, you require an organization to make those missiles work. And that means pulling soldiers from somewhere, or training soldiers, or even training civilians to make these things work. And you've got to have a command and control system, a new one that you haven't got at the moment. So new command posts, new radars perhaps. So there's all sorts of things on the air defense that have got to happen to make it better. And that is what the foreign countries are talking about at the moment. On the attack side, then the drones that Ukraine has been firing are apparently 3 to 5% effective. In other words, Russia is actually knocking down a lot of them. But Russia is a huge country. Its air defense has got more holes in it than Ukraine's has. So what is needed is support from America to say where the launchers are, so that Ukraine can actually guide its drones, around the launchers to attack the energy facilities. And without that support from satellites and from AWACS aircraft, then Ukraine is basically firing blind, which is why they want Tomahawk, to give them something that has got a better capacity.
And with NATO's continued military support for Ukraine and the European Union's internal leverage, how can both organizations better align their efforts to ensure that Ukraine has sustained and comprehensive support now?
Well, that's a very good question. I mean, both organizations are very bureaucratic and slow, and the problem is with the number of countries that you're actually dealing with something that's almost like a jigsaw puzzle of pieces here, pieces there, pieces here, and each of these offerings basically has to go through national parliaments. I mean, if NATO says we're going to do something, it's still got to go through the Spanish parliament. It will get delayed by Hungary, as we know. So all these things take a lot of time, and the most important thing at the moment that is needed is political reform at the highest level of both organizations. But I don't see that happening. So I think we're just going to carry on with the same slow moving actions, and without Europe having a European defense, but still being just a conglomeration of national efforts, some fast, some slow, some good, some bad. So I think Ukraine is just going to have to make do with what it's got, and just keep positive and keep working.
And also talking about slogan, also NATO and EU, with Ukraine's EU accession in process, still underway. These are also slow. So how should the EU balance enlargement aspirations with internal cohesion and strategic clarity while supporting Ukraine?
Well, I think its big challenge is dealing with the fact that you actually need unanimous agreement to do anything. And Hungary and Slovakia as well have basically shown that this unanimous requirement actually destroys the ability of the EU to work quickly and to work sensibly. So I think that politically that's one of the political reforms that is needed. It needs to be unanimous, or at least an overwhelming amount of the countries saying yes, without actually having to take Hungary, who are working for Russia at this moment, to take Hungary's views into account. Because what we've got at the moment within the EU is Russia has got a veto through Hungary. So that reform needs to take place. Ukraine needs EU membership badly, because it's probably the one thing that will actually attack the corruption in a sensible way. The power of the EU through various agencies, through various ministries and actions and rules and laws, has the ability to attack this illness that Ukraine has still of corruption. So the quicker that Ukraine can get close to or into the EU, the quicker that some of these things will actually change in Ukraine, And then Ukraine's own organization will start to work in a more effective and efficient manner.
Thank you for sharing that. And Glenn, lastly, what do you think are the challenges and opportunities for Europe in building strategic autonomy while remaining transatlantically aligned, especially amid this uncertainty?
Well, the big opportunity is the business side. Which is what it was set up for in the first place. It is the largest common market in the world. And it's got huge power. Its challenge is to try and remove some of the bureaucracy, the heavy bureaucracy that has actually started to kill entrepreneurship in the EU. And there is entrepreneurship in the EU, but there are also heavy rules and regulations across the EU that actually slow things down. If you ever see the paperwork required to get a grant for a small entrepreneurial company, in many cases it's impossible. They simply don't have the resources of maybe a group of 3 or 4 people to spend 3 months trying to get all the detail and all the information required to make a bid. And so,
Glenn, thank you. We are running short on time for that discussion, but thank you very much for joining us and sharing that insight throughout this topic. Now we move on. Around 1,000 South Koreans are believed to be working in online scam operations in Cambodia, according to National Security Advisor Wee Sung-lak. The larger scam industry in Cambodia, which employs around 200,000 people from various countries, targets victims globally, including those in South Korea. Though the exact number of South Koreans involved is hard to verify, estimates by domestic authorities suggest over 1,000 are engaged in these illicit activities. These online scams often involve fraudulent schemes such as phishing and investment scams, causing significant financial losses worldwide. Now we move on. President Donald Trump has awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the nation's highest civilian honor, to slain activist Charlie Kirk. President Trump has presented the award to Charlie's widow, Erica Kirk. In his speech, President Trump has mentioned his historic trip to the Middle East, where the United States helped broker a ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas. Erica has thanked Trump for honoring her late husband, as well as for securing peace in the Middle East. Let's listen into what the two have said.